or shaker exercise is designed to strengthen the muscles that lift the hyoid bone up and forward, and thus lift the larynx up and forward, and open the upper esophageal sphincter. Those muscles are the anterior belly of digastric, the mylohyoid, and the geniohyoid muscles. To do the exercise, the individual lies on their back with shoulders and head against a bed or the floor, and lifts their head, leaving their shoulders against the bed or floor. The shoulders must not be elevated to do the exercise correctly. The individual lifts their head up and high enough to see their toes. No lifting of the toes. And holds their head that way for 1 minute. Then rests for 1 minute and repeats that 3 times with a minute of rest between each repetition. Then the individual lifts their head to see their toes, rests it back, up and down 30 times. If the patient is too weak to achieve the 1 minute of head elevation, they can start with whatever duration they're able to produce, and with practice gradually increase that to the 1 minute time. Let's look at someone doing this exercise. This is an exercise to strengthen the muscles in your neck at the very top that lift up your voice box and help open up the junction to your esophagus. So what you have to do is just leave your shoulders lying against the table, and when you lift, I want you to lift your head. When you lift it, don't lift your shoulders, but lift your head high enough to see your toes. And I want you to stay there for 1 minute. You just see your toes, but leave your shoulders on the table. And just relax. Now you don't have any problems. Good.
I can feel myself trembling.
That's because those muscles aren't strong enough. About 30 seconds left. Is it still feeling fairly comfortable, or is it? Yeah, you only have about 10 seconds left. What I'd like you to do is just relax, let your head go down, and we give you 1 minute to relax. And in practice, you're going to do 3 of those. 3 with your head up for a minute, and then your head down, resting for a minute, and then up for a minute, down for a minute, up for a minute, down for a minute. Then the next thing you're going to do is just lift your head to see your toes and put it back down. Don't hold it up for any length of time. Just lift it up, see your toes, put it back. Why don't you try 5 of those? Because you're going to do 30 of them in a row. Still with shoulders to the table. Good. 1, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. 1 more. Up, down. Now, how does that feel? How does your neck feel? Like okay. So I think you're able to do. Why don't we start with just 2 of the up for a minute, down for a minute, up for a minute, down for a minute, and then 20 of the lift your head, see your toes, lift your head, see your toes. And if it bothers you, we can shorten it a little more, but let's try that much, and then next week when you come in, we'll see how you've been doing, and if need be, we'll stay at that level, or we'll add on back to what we need to get to, which is the 3 up and down 30 of the up, down, up, down, up, down. Okay? So I'll write that down for you, and then you'll practice this week, and we'll see you next week.
I love that video. It cracks me up. She's trying to, obviously model there how you would, that interaction would go with the patient, right? So this is what we're going to do, and this is how I'm going to modify it for you. And the Shakirs, there's a couple of articles actually on the Shakir, and it has been very effective for helping with cricopharyngeal opening, I think, as well as laryngeal elevation. Laryngeal elevation. So, there are some people trying to come up with a modification to that where you could do something similar without having to lay flat. Like I've heard that they're trying to do something, I don't know what, like a thing that would go around the neck where you could go like that, like more of a spring thing, and get resistance here, where you push against something and it would come back, almost like, or if you think about putting a tennis ball or something here where you would squeeze it down and back up. And it would be nice, I think, if somebody could come up with some sort of device that could do that. I think that would be beneficial, because I think there's a lot of pressure, or more pressure, on people's bodies to do it laying down and having to look at your toes. I think there's a lot of room for just error of other muscles, when you're doing that. If you do something wrong, you tweak your neck or whatever. So. Thought I had, wait a second. Yeah, I'm just going to go to this since the light's off. And I'll go back to those other two slides in just a second. But, so, sometimes we have patients that can't eat, right? Or that we can't do what we call direct therapy with, because we can't give them food. So we have to do more like indirect and work on trying to get the muscles back to a place where the patient can tolerate eating anything at all. We call that indirect management when they can't have any bolus. And one of the techniques facilitation techniques that Jerry Lokeman came up with is called thermal stimulation. There's kind of, people are like pro and con this thermal stim. Some people have used it and not had much luck with it with their patients. Other people think it works great. I'm going to play this, and again, it has the same cast as our previous video.
Thermal tactile stimulation is a therapy technique that is designed, again, to put in front of a swallow attempt a heightened sensory awareness. It's particularly designed for the patient with a delayed pharyngeal swallow in an attempt to reduce the delay. The technique involves using a size 00 laryngeal mirror rubbed against the anterior fossal arch, with the mirror kept in contact with the arch 4 to 5 times, rubbing up and down. We want to be sure we stimulate only the anterior fossal arch. And after we've done the stimulation, ask the patient to swallow and assess the speed of the swallow. It should be faster than it is when they swallow without any of the stimulation. When the swallow slows down, we again repeat the stimulation with the mirror. You don't have to do the stimulation before every swallow. Generally, what we see is there is the fastest swallow after the first stimulation, and then the swallow slowly slows down, and after another 3 or 4 swallows, we need to go back and repeat the stimulation with the mirror. Let's look at this technique being used with a patient. What we want to do is give you some additional sensation before you swallow. And to do that, we're going to use something that we call thermal tactile stimulation. It's actually rubbing on a part of your mouth that has a lot of sensory nerves in it.
Will that hurt?
No, it won't hurt you at all. And it is my job to do it and not gag you. If I gag you, I'm doing it wrong. And so you shouldn't gag. And if I do it, I apologize. It's by accident. Gagging and swallowing are 100% different from each other. And what I'm going to do is use a little bitty laryngeal mirror like this. It's been in some ice, so it's cold. And I'm going to hold it like this, like a pencil, so I can rotate it to make it fit right into the area where we know the sensory nerve endings are. Now, I don't want to hold it like a dagger. I don't want to hold it like this. Because if I do that, I will invariably touch the areas at the back of your tongue and your throat that will gag you. So I should hold it like a pencil where I can rotate it and get it easily into your mouth. Now, let me just show you by touching where I want to make the contact so you know what it's going to be like before we do it. Okay? Now, if you open your mouth, okay, we have first the arch at the back of your teeth, and that is the retromolar area. You can find it easily by following the teeth along, and then the first arch is not the anterior fossil arch, it's the retromolar trigone, it's called. Then around behind that is the anterior fossil arch, and that's where we want the contact. I'm going to go in, and it's right here, and I'm going to rub up and down, leaving the mirror in contact with the arch. I'm going to make contact rubbing up and down 5 times. If I go any further back, and I will now on purpose, beyond that first soft arch, I will be at the posterior arch. And you didn't gag, that's good, but I could have drawn this. Because if you go behind the anterior arch, you're touching the posterior arch, and you can easily stimulate the wrong receptors and get a gag reflex. So what I just did, where I was rubbing on the middle arch, that's the one we want to rub on. Okay? If we look in the mouth and there's only 2 arches, what usually happens with aging is, thank you, that the second arch, the arch we want to contact, the anterior fossil arch, tends to move backward with age and resorb somewhat into the side wall of the mouth. That's still where we want to contact. So if you don't see an arch, that's where you want to rub. Back, behind, and on the side, behind the retromolar area. Now, you can actually learn to do this to yourself, because it's not uncomfortable, as you can tell. Did it bother you when I did it in the right spot? No? Okay, good. So, yourself, every so often as you're eating, if your swallow slows down. Okay?